Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today we're getting into start-sit wide receivers for Week 12 of the fantasy football season. Getting this out early to you guys with obviously a 3-game Thanksgiving slate and as well a game on Friday. Felt like if we didn't get this out early enough, then it would be for waste with missing 4 matchups before Sunday. But as well, guys, if you're looking to set your lineups and when you're setting your lineups for Thursday, be sure to be putting a lot of these guys you have that are starting on Thursday and Friday into the flex spots, giving you flexibility with into the receiver or running back spots and leaving you flexibility at those flex spots if any injuries come up, because we are getting this out early. I have basically no practice report information to work off of for the games on Sunday. So we'll go through each of these matchups every single game, and I'll give you an idea of what to do in worst case and best case scenarios. If you guys are new to the channel, would appreciate if you hit that subscribe button. And for all you guys that have always been watching these videos each and every week, hit that like button for me. We'd really appreciate it. We got fantasy football content coming out every single day to help you win your fantasy leagues. Let's get into the matchups for Week 12. Kicking things off on Thursday with Packers-Lions on your Thanksgiving Thursday. For us, I am in Canada, we do not have Thanksgiving. We will be live on the OwnersBox Sports YouTube and as well the OwnersBox Sports Twitch channel. We'll be streaming these games, hanging out and watching these, maybe putting together some sort of nice meal. Maybe not a Thanksgiving meal, but we'll be hanging out. So come join us if you are available. But let's get into this game, starting with the Packers side of things. I mean, we saw obviously a huge game from Jordan Love against the Chargers defense last week. Would I expect that to continue? No, definitely not. The Chargers are by far the worst defense in the NFL. But the Lions, the biggest way to beat this defense is definitely through the air. So I do think Love will put the ball in the air quite a bit. They're 21st in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position are the Packers. Middle of the road, 16th in EPA. But they're a really good run defense. And the coverage grade you see from PFF is not good. So this is where the matchup is the most advantageous for the Packers. And you saw Love throw the ball a ton against the Lions when they played earlier in the year. Question is, who's going to produce? Jaden Reed has shown a lot of consistency. I think you're more trusting in a guy like him than you are in Christian Watson, despite his target volume. It's a huge question mark there. But again, matchup is good. We'll get into what to do start sit-wise and shortly here with the Lions. The Packers are a good pass defense. I think they're a pretty solid unit, especially when they are healthy. They're top 5 in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. 21st in EPA, so not a terrific team against the pass, but the strength is definitely the pass as opposed to the run. And I think we know when Dan Campbell gets into a plus matchup for his run game, he'll definitely look to bully you and make it a point of emphasis. So I would expect to see the Lions run the ball quite a bit here, but that doesn't mean there isn't something to take advantage of in the passing game. And that means Amon St. Brown will be someone I'm obviously going to be starting week in and week out. But beyond that, Josh Reynolds, Jameson Williams, those are guys. For Reynolds, he's just been on the field a ton, but hasn't demanded volume of really any significant sort the last number of weeks. And then Williams is getting on the field more, but this isn't a good enough matchup to play somebody like him whose target share is very small. As for the Packers, I know Christian Watson scored last week, but look, I was watching these last 2 games very intently because I had a big bet on him, his receiving yards over 2 weeks ago, and the Chargers were playing the Packers. The Chargers are my favorite team, so I watched both these games pretty intently, and it's just the consistency of Watson getting the football is not there. The red zone opportunities are great, and I'm certainly encouraged by that, but just between the 20s, like Dontavian Wicks, Luke Musgrave, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, everybody else is getting the ball with Christian Watson. Reed is someone I'm feeling a lot better about over the last 2 weeks. I think he's someone you can start. Same goes for Romeo Doubs. But again, these guys, despite the good matchup, because of it being just a clusterfuck between these 3 guys, I'm not really excited to start any of them. So if you would play them, they're fair bit lower in terms of my rankings on the week. So startable, but not super excited about. Commanders at the Cowboys. This is a huge spread in this game. I believe the Commanders are 11.5 point underdogs here. The Cowboys have blown out every bad team they've faced, it seems like. The exception being the Arizona Cardinals, I guess, in week 2. And the strength of the Cowboys defense is, of course, the pass. They're top 10 in all these metrics I pay attention to. The pass rush is great. 3rd in fantasy points allowed, 4th in EPA. Doesn't really matter the opponent. The Commanders will lean on the pass with Bieniemy calling plays. In that trailing game script, Howell is probably going to throw the ball quite a bit. 40-plus times is basically the norm for him as of late. Could we see a little bit more Brian Robinson? Could we see a little bit more of the run game? I don't know. The Cowboys are still a good run defense as well. So it could be tough sledding here, but volume will definitely be a point of emphasis. As for the Cowboys, the Commanders' definitely biggest weakness is against the pass. They're now missing the pass rushers with Sweat and Young gone. They're now 30th in fantasy points allowed, 29th in EPA against the pass. So we have a great matchup for the passing game here and these wide receivers. And now with the way Brandon Cooks is seeing more consistency, I'm going to be starting him in this matchup because, again, the Cowboys do need to build this lead, and the run game is not the way that they've been doing it. They have not run the ball super effectively this season, so I like both Cooks and Lamb. And then for the Commanders, it's another cluster of options. They're running a ton of guys out there. Samuel's routes run was really low last week. I wonder if it's just coming back from the injury. But Samuel, De'Ami Brown, Byron Pringle getting out there. Obviously Jahan Dotson, Logan Thomas, and then Terry McLaurin being that number one. McLaurin I'm going to with that passing volume. I think, of course, he is the lead target here. I will play him. But beyond that, just too much going on when it comes to these other wide receivers that I don't have enough faith, especially against a really good defense. Closing things out on Thursday, 49ers at the Seahawks. We've got a Seahawks team that's really banged up. The one thing I could see on the injury report is just a litany of guys that are practicing, but questionable heading into this game when it's Geno Smith, when it's DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Tariq Woolen. The list just went on for this team. Abraham Lucas as well. So I'd be surprised if Geno plays here, just with a short week coming back. I know he did get on the field for that last drive, which was surprising, but Drew Lock with that pick kind of killed the game for them. So I guess anything they could do to get Geno out there, they did. He's definitely holding that questionable tag. It doesn't hold a huge impact on me for what to do because we're going to see probably Zach Charbonnet as the starter here and no Ken Walker. I don't think the Seahawks will be able to run the ball effectively. So whoever's at quarterback, whether it's Locke or Smith, should see a good enough amount of passing volume to be able to support these guys. Because again, this is the weaker part of the 49ers defense is against the pass. As for the Seahawks, run defense has really taken a tumble the last 3-4 weeks here. Went from being a top 10 unit to now being a bottom 10 unit. The 49ers will be able to move the ball effectively regardless of what they want to do, whether it's through the air or on the ground. I think the Seahawks are now a better unit against the pass, so it's not a slam dunk matchup like it was last week for the Niners against the Bucs, but still one, where the Seahawks aren't a tantalizing unit to be able to stop them. So Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. Ayuk is the wide receiver one in this offense for sure, but Samuel is still someone I'm willing to play as well. A little bit more of a competitive matchup too for the Niners, where the last couple of weeks have been massive blows with the Jags and the Bucs. As for the Seahawks, Metcalf with Locke, I think will be hyper targeted in this offense. If it's Geno Smith, I still feel good about both of these guys. Again, passing volume is really what I'm paying attention to here. Lockett is just so consistent. He's definitely a wide receiver, back-end wide receiver 3 for me. So there's definitely other options that I like over him. But the consistency and the high floor is enough to play him in a matchup where the volume should see a little bit of an uptick as well. Dolphins at the Jets. We've got to talk about the Dolphins really bouncing back here with Jalen Ramsey being back and Vic Fangio's defense being fully implemented as a great pass defense. They struggled early on, and now they've been a terrific unit. They're top 10 now in EPA against the pass. Their pass rush has looked really good too, with Chubb and Phillips. And the fantasy points wise, 18th, so more middle of the road. It's not a unit to completely be avoiding. But when you're playing the Jets, who are going to start Tim Boyle, if you guys are looking for a good laugh, go look at Tim Boyle's college stats at UConn. You would be shocked how this guy ended up in the NFL. It's crazy. But probably worth going to with the way that Zach Wilson has played. But, does not matter. Boyle or Wilson, this offense is going to struggle to move the ball with the offensive line. Now for the Dolphins, obviously a tough matchup with the Jets pass defense. Number 1 in fantasy points allowed, 6th in EPA, have the best coverage grade in the league. But this is a unit that's out there so much. Yes, they're helping they're limiting opponents in terms of points allowed on a drive-to-dive basis. Been great, but when you're on the field as much as this defense is, it's really hard to take it in a matchup where the Dolphins are such a powerful offense as one to be too worried about. So when it comes to the wide receiver position, this is what I want to do. I definitely want to start Tyreek Hill. I definitely want to start Jalen Waddle. I know Waddle has been a less consistent option to go to, but I still feel good about playing him just with the upside that he provides after the catch. As for the Jets, look, Garrett Wilson is at a point here where last week 8 targets, 2 receptions, and was it 8 yards? Was it 20 yards? I can't quite remember. I'm not trusting Tim Boyle at quarterback. I'm going to be sitting everybody in the Jets offense here, minus Breece Hall. The rest of these guys are just not worth the squeeze because, again, the Dolphins also pass defense-wise are really, really improving too. All right, we made it to Sunday. We've got the Jaguars and the Texans. A great game here. Really excited for this one. Obviously, a rematch here from the Texans winning this game earlier in the season. We've got a Jaguars team that defensively has been really good across the board. Really big bounce back game against the Titans last week, but they've been really, really good against the run. and that has forced teams to go to the air. I think that'll continue here with the Texans. I know they've been running the ball super effectively the last couple of weeks with Devin Singletary. Don't think that'll be the case here against this Jaguars defense, who really kept them in check in the running game last when they played earlier in the season. I have a short coming out with Singletary being one of those must-sit guys. It was like 86 yards on 26 carries, stout run defense, so expect the passing volume to be really high here for Houston. And now for the Jaguars side of things, the Texans are still a top 10 unit against fantasy wide receivers, but again, 22nd in EPA. This is not a terrific defense in my mind. I don't really, I kind of think of them as a pretty average defense across the board at this point. Proved against the run, the pass is like okay, so a team that is fairly neutral when it comes to making start-to-sit decisions in the passing game. And with that big week from Calvin Ridley against the Titans, I am going to be willing to go back to him and start him. Same goes for Christian Kirk. A bit of a down week, but I mean, I think he had 50 receiving yards, so it wasn't absolutely terrible. These are two guys that will play against this Texans defense. And then for the Texans, both Collins and Dell are must-start guys pretty much week in and week out moving forward. They're great options. I'm not sure if Noah Brown will be back. If he is, I'd probably still lean towards sitting him. This is a good matchup for the passing game, but just again, coming off the injury, he's going to be the third receiver. I think if Woods is healthy, the two of them will kind of split some routes, and Dell and Collins will stay on the field in two wide receiver sets. So not quite there if he is back, if you did add him off the wire a couple weeks ago. An AFC North battle, we've got the Steelers and the Bengals. The Bengals in their first game without Joe Burrow, going to Jake Browning moving forward. I definitely think Browning's an obvious drop-off. I think what we saw in the sample size against the Ravens was not great, but I do have some confidence in him being able to keep this offense above water. I think this could still be a 500 football team by the end of the season. I know they're going to have some tough matchups to close out the year, especially with this division, but I do think this defense or this offense won't be as bad as some people might think. The Steelers on the season are improving a little bit against the pass when it comes to overall defense, 7th in EPA against the pass, but still 26th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. They're bottom 10 unit in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers and running backs. I think the bigger weakness is the run game. So even with Browning at quarterback, we're looking at a really good pass rush. I think there'll still be some struggles, so look for the run game to be more of a point of emphasis here. And then for the Bengals, they've dropped to a bottom 10 unit both against the receivers and running backs, which is surprising to see. Now, I think the Bengals will still be able to find success defensively. The Steelers make a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator change. What do they look like? I think it's really a spot here where you got to wait and see in terms of what they kind of do schematically. What is their run pass split? Are they going to be running the ball more? Do they want to put the ball in Kenny Pickett's hands more? Are they pushing the ball downfield more? Because that's a question between George Pickens and Deontay Johnson that we do have to figure out. So when it comes to these defenses, there is some of these numbers point to we can find some advantages with our receivers. But again, when you look at where the offenses are at, that's another question to be asked. So that leaves me with one wide receiver each I do want to start. I think Johnson, when you get into better matchups, last week was the Browns, so very, very difficult. Now you have the Bengals. When you get into decent matchups, his volume makes him a really high floor play. So I do think you can start Deontay Johnson as a potential flex option as a wide receiver 4. And then for the Bengals, Jamar Chase will definitely be, I think we see with backup quarterbacks, a hyper-targeted guy. I would expect to still get great production from him. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. If Higgins does play, I'm sitting him. If he doesn't, I'm still going to sit Tyler Boyd as well. But either one of these guys, regardless of what happens injury-wise, I'm going to be sitting both. Panthers at the Titans. Think this is a definite get-right spot for the Titans offense. I see it more for their ground game. Derrick Henry has really struggled the last couple of weeks. I think he has a big game here against a really bad Panthers run defense. That's going to take away some volume from the passing game, ease things up here for Will Levis. It's definitely a great spot for Levis, who I think when he gets to go against a less tantalizing pass rush, the Jaguars we saw last week, we saw the Steelers the week prior, he'll definitely find some more success. Now, again, the volume I think will be down a little bit. As for the Panthers, running the football is going to be very tough. This is an opportunity where throwing the ball is going to have some benefits because we look at what the Titans have done against the pass, and they're one of the worst units in the league, 28th in EPA, 27th in fantasy points allowed. So you do have a matchup here for Bryce Young to be able to take advantage of, and I am surprised that the Titans pass rush grade is bottom 10 in the league because they do have some talent there. Could they get right with the pass rush? Because again, if the pass rush is moving, it's still going to be tough sledding for Bryce Young, but this is as plus of a matchup as you can really get for Young and this passing offense. Now, that's still not really going to change too much. Adam Thielen is someone I want to start, absolutely, because the passing volume will be high because I do think the Titans have a great run defense. But Jonathan Mingo, Laviska Shenault, if DJ Chark plays, I'm still not willing to go to any of these guys when you look at the way this offense has moved the ball and just the scheme overall. It's really vanilla. It's a lot of short area passing. They're not pushing the ball downfield much, so I don't feel confident in playing any of the other guys who don't get the volume that Thielen does. As for the Titans, DeAndre Hopkins, definitely think is a good start here because, again, the Panthers defense, it's by far much, much worse against the run, but it's still not a great unit against the pass. Some great play action opportunities for Hopkins to hit some downfield plays. So look out for that. Otherwise, receivers in this offense are not even worth even looking at. So nothing else there. Saints at the Falcons have some question marks when it comes to Derek Carr's status, who's going to be starting at quarterback. He was with a concussion. He was in protocol last week. Dennis Allen said it's kind of still the same. I would expect with 2 weeks off for him to be able to play in this one, but we will see what happens there. The Falcons are a team that have been very good against the run. Both these teams have been great against the run, but the Falcons especially. So passing volume will be a little bit up. You'll see a little bit of an uptick from the Saints. 13th in fantasy points allowed, 20th in EPA against the pass are the Falcons. And then the Saints have been a pretty elite unit against the pass, but they are going to be missing Marshawn Lattimore. That is something to keep in mind. 9th in fantasy points allowed, though, and 8th in EPA against the pass, one of the better coverage grades in the league, too. So with the Saints losing Michael Thomas as well, there is some consideration for me to play Rashid Shaheed in this matchup because, again, the passing game is where you're going to find some more advantageous opportunities. But again, with all 16 teams playing, with a ton of options for you to be able to go to, I do lean more towards sitting him. But again, he's capable of creating some explosive plays. I don't think he would be a really bad start. It's just a risky start that in this particular week I'm not willing to take. But maybe next week he'd probably be someone that I would be willing to start with some buys. A.T. Perry's going to step in in Michael Thomas's absence, and he did get some decent volume. I will be intrigued to see what happens with a full week and a couple weeks, obviously, with the bye week as well to prepare for this one. As for the Falcons, Drake London, if he is back, I will be looking to start him because, again, running the football against the Saints is really tough as well. So there could be a good enough volume here. And of course, I also like getting Heineke at QB over Desmond Ridder. So that's a positive. The rest of the receivers, we kind of know the deal there. Bucs at the Colts. We've got, I think, a great opportunity for the Bucs and their offense to be able to move the football and bounce back from that game against the San Francisco 49ers. I think they'll find some success running the ball, and the Colts have been a pretty middle-of-the-road defense overall. They're not bottom 10 or top 10 in any of these categories we look at. And then for the Colts side of things, passing volume is king here. Minshew has not been good against the blitz. The Bucs like to blitz quite a bit. I think it's the second highest rate in the league, like 38%. That is a concern, but the passing volume should be high because the Bucs are one of the best run defenses in the league for yet another season. You look at it with the fantasy points allowed, they're 29th. That is because the passing volume is really high against them. So we'll get into a little bit more with these start-sit decisions when it comes to what I want to do in specific and who I want to start. But again, these are great. This is a great opportunity here for the Colts pass game if Minshew can weather the blitz in this one. Now, like I said with the Bucs, I do think they'll find some success on the ground. You know, Evans and Godwin are seeing similar target share, and Evans has more valuable targets. Godwin is getting far too many of his targets, not making enough out of the targets he has received. And I expect him to have a bigger target share, but it just hasn't materialized. And Evans is that ever valuable end zone target and downfield target. So I think Godwin won't see quite the volume he's seen the last couple of weeks. So I do lean towards sitting him with so many options for you this week. But for Evans, definitely think it's not a matchup to be scared of too much, that I still do like playing him here. But I do think the run game will find some success. And then for the Colts, so I mentioned Minshew struggles against the blitz. I still think the pass volume will be high enough for Pittman to be a guy to start, but I love Josh Downs. The Bucs are second last in the NFL in fantasy points allowed to slot receivers. That's where Downs is running over 80% of his routes. And then as well, play a lot of zone coverage. And Downs has gotten 84% of his production against zone coverage. He's been very good against zone. He's going to be a great target for you this week. I think the reception numbers will be there. This is going to be about how well Minshew can effectively make some downfield plays if he's seeing that pressure. Patriots at the Giants. I would expect the only way you're watching this game if it comes up on red zone, but there might not be many points in this one. Patriots defense, definitely the bigger weakness is against the pass, but we're going up against Tommy DeVito and potentially without Darius Slayton as well. You know, we haven't seen Darren Waller, so it's definitely troublesome when it comes to can you find someone that's going to be able to produce with this positive matchup, because the Pats are like the best run. I think they're number one in EPA against the pass so far this season. Then for the Giants, there's really not a lot of things this defense does extremely well. They're 28th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. They played a little bit better defensively as of late, and that's led to some positive or some game scripts where, you know, the Commanders have been throwing the ball a ton against them. And we'll see what they're capable of in this one defensively, but definitely a spot for the Patriots, probably benching Mac Jones, where we could see some more offensive success. Now, that doesn't mean a hell of a lot when it comes to fantasy. Demario Douglas, though, target volume is so good. Definitely want to be playing him just because of that high floor. Like, I like him more than a guy like Chris Godwin, that's for sure. So I do think the target volume puts him in a good spot here. And I do think when it comes to this offense, they're not running the ball effectively against basically anyone, so there will still be some passing volume there. And then I know the Patriots are a pretty bad pass defense, but look, give Bill Belichick a couple weeks with that bye to prepare for a rookie quarterback who he now has a little bit of film on. Don't see Tommy DeVito having a lot of success here. I would not look to play any of these receivers, even if Slayton starts, and expect to see a good, even with the tough matchup, probably a good amount of volume for Saquon Barkley that takes away from these passing weapons. Browns at the Broncos. Man, every game the Browns play in, it just feels like sit everybody, basically. And when it comes to this Browns defense and the numbers, you're looking at it, what are they? Number 2 in fantasy points allowed, number 1 EPA against the pass. The pass rush is just so damn good. I'm definitely worried about what Russell Wilson can do against this pass rush. And the pass defense has been terrific. A lot of man coverage. I don't think Judy and Sutton are overwhelmingly talented players to be able to beat some of this man coverage against these talented corners. Huge concern for me there. And then for the Brown side of things, look, it's Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Don't think the pass volume will be high because the Broncos are an elite unit a brutal unit, the worst in the league when it comes to stopping the run. So expect the run volume to be high. It has been all season. So I don't see a lot of volume here. And the Broncos are improving. They're almost in the top 10 in fantasy points allowed to receivers. I think a lot of that comes down to teams can run the ball so effectively. The pass volume is low, but there is some talent there when you look at like a Pat Surtain. Obviously, Kareem Jackson going to be suspended, but don't see the passing game where we find advantages here for the Browns offense. Very simple for me. Yet another week like we did with Browns Steelers, and it worked out quite well. I'm sitting everybody in this game. Not enough. I don't think there'll be enough volume for the Browns receivers, and then you have Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback. Cannot trust anybody there. And then for the Broncos, I don't think Judy creates enough separation in man coverage to be able to find success. The Browns defense is just so damn good. This game has a really low total for good reason. Even with Sutton and what he can do in the red zone, I don't think there's enough here for me to want to play him either. So I'm sitting everybody in this game. Rams at the Cardinals. I don't expect to see Cooper Kupp in this one. The injury that he left the game and did not return last week to his foot, I'd be shocked if he plays. Like, yes, he's got a full week to heal up, but again, this is a player who's dealt with nagging injuries before. Haven't seen him when he gets hurt play the next week, so I wouldn't anticipate seeing that this week, so that is what I'm going to go off of. It is a plus matchup, though, when you look at the Cardinals' defense. 31st in EPA against the pass, 20th in fantasy points allowed. Don't generate much of a pass rush, which should really help Matthew Stafford in this one. And then for the Cardinals' offense, with Kyler Murray at quarterback, a lot of these numbers from especially PFF and even as well from Sports Info Solutions, like EPA-wise, 26th. They have the lowest coverage grade in the league. I don't think it completely reflects how they've been playing. I don't think this is a horrible pass defense. So it's not one I'm extremely excited about when it comes to the passing game for the Cardinals. And then you also have this being another situation where there's just so many guys getting the ball that it's really tough to figure out. But again, 14th in fantasy points allowed, so more middle-of-the-road matchup when it comes to this pass defense, in my mind. So that puts me in a spot here with Marquise Brown. I do want to start him. I know he's burned you the last 2 weeks, but those deep targets have been there for him plenty. I think this is a matchup where he can hit them, and as well, I think this is another opportunity for that target volume to increase. I don't think Michael Wilson will be back. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say I don't think. He had a setback and then didn't play, but I think the expectation was he was going to play last week. So I think there's a decent chance he does play because he was only holding the questionable tag this past week, but we'll see what happens there. Regardless, I don't want to start him or Rondell Moore. Moore isn't getting good enough volume. Greg Dortch had a big week stepping in for Wilson. Even if he does come back and play, I can't trust him enough to go to him, especially, again, 16, all 32 teams playing this week, so it's hard to find, the guy to sit to be able to plug in someone like Greg Dortch. Sometimes that could be the case with Marquise Brown, but I think there is upside if you're an underdog in a matchup that Brown can provide that for you. And then with the Rams, Puka Nacua definitely going to be playing here. He should be a dominant target if there is no Cooper Kupp. Tutu Atwell, I was really close to listing as a start here because we saw what he did without Cooper Kupp. But again, ton of options for you that you can potentially play here. And Atwell was falling off a little bit even before Kupp's arrival, so would expect Nacua to be the big play, and then the rest here to be a lot more difficult to consider starting. Bills at the Eagles, probably the biggest game on the slate. We got a Bills team that is definitely turning things around again when it comes to their pass defense. 7th in fantasy points allowed, 13th in EPA, one of the better coverage grades in the league as well, which was surprising to see. They obviously they have been pretty good lately when it comes to the defense. The offense has provided some question marks. I think the matchup with the Jets definitely helps boost a lot of these numbers too, and their lack of ability to move the ball. But got to take some of this information for what it is. As for the Eagles, you're going to see this Bills team throw the ball. I would expect close to 50 times in this game because we've seen in matchups where they're down or where they can't run the football, lean on the pass really, really heavily. I know they made the coordinator change. I don't think that has an impact when it comes to this particular matchup. The Eagles dead last in fantasy points allowed, 2 wide receivers, and that is because they are the best run defense in the league. So volume should be great here for a ton of production for these guys if Josh Allen can find a way to get it done. But the Eagles had great answers for the Chiefs passing attack, so it'll be really interesting to see what they have in store for the Bills. But again, 2 weeks to prep with the bye week they had, just a week here, so that might have an impact on how good the game plan truly is. But expect for both of these teams to see some points. So for the Eagles, week in and week out, pretty much the same decision. A.J. Brown off of a absolutely terrible week, which is shocking because he's great against man. And the Chiefs play a ton of man. Did not work out, but him and Smith are definitely guys I'm starting every week. And then I'm going to go to Gabe Davis off some down weeks. Passing volume will be high. I think this team will need to chase some big plays. The Eagles can give some opportunities for that with a little bit of single high coverage as well. But Khalil Shakur, again, volume isn't good enough for him. We talked about this in the waiver wire video earlier this week. I can't trust him, especially in, a week with so many games to pick from and so many options to play. He just isn't quite on the radar right now. Chiefs at the Raiders. Definitely see this as a bounce back spot for the Chiefs offense. When they play the Raiders, there tends to be a lot of points. And coming off the loss, I expect this offense to get right. I know the Raiders right now are 11th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. They've actually been a good unit against the pass this year. It's the run game that's found a lot of success. But the Chiefs are a team that don't lean on the ground too much. I expect Pacheco to definitely get some good volume and produce in this one. But the pass game, I think, will still be able to be effective because I don't think the Raiders are as good of a unit as some of these numbers do indicate. And then for the Raiders, L'Jarius Sneed, you got to definitely point to as the guy that put A.J. Brown on an island, basically. Like very little production, very little target share. That is going to have an effect when it comes to what we think about Devontae Adams. But again, Adams can definitely be moved all over the field, get him out of these matchups, and ultimately he has been a target hog since Antonio Pierce has taken over as the head coach. So despite the concern, I am going to play Adams. Definitely see him more as a back-end wide receiver, 2 wide receiver, 3 in this matchup, but I think the target volume is still there for him to produce, especially with the Chiefs likely dominating this game, giving that game script for Adams to be getting that volume. Beyond that, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow, no longer on the radar is Myers. It was a great start to the season, but it's really fallen off as of late. And so I'm not quite there to be able to start him in a really tough matchup. Then with the Chiefs, I originally had Rice listed as a sit because Justin Watson is just, for some reason, the dominant target hog in this offense. I was shocked to see the amount of opportunities he got last week against the Eagles. I think Rice is by far the most talented player on the field beyond Travis Kelce when it comes to potential pass catchers for Mahomes. I thought he looked really good, just didn't get quite enough volume. I think this is a game where he finds a little bit more production in a softer matchup than what we saw against the Eagles defense. So I still would start him, but he's definitely more in that flex area. Sunday Night Football. The Chargers get Sunday Night Football for yet another week, getting the Ravens in prime time at home. This is definitely a tough matchup for the Chargers passing game. The Ravens have been an elite defense. The pass rush has really turned around too. Could cause some problems for sure for the Chargers in pass protection. 4th in fantasy points allowed, 3rd in EPA against the pass. This is going to be a difficult matchup, especially with the Chargers' lack of weapons beyond Keenan Allen. Austin Eckler has looked absolutely terrible the last 4 or 5 weeks. The Chargers have to be happy that they did not give him an extension when he had been demanding for it in the offseason. And we have them banged up as well. Don't know if Gerald Everett will be back. Jalen Guyton didn't play last week. Should be really interesting. As for the Ravens, even without Mark Andrews, I think the pass game finds a ton of success. The Chargers, 31st in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, 25th in EPA. They're losing Joey Bosa as well. That'll definitely hurt the pass rush. Give more time for Lamar Jackson to slice this defense up, and I think it's going to be a long day for the secondary. Now, we don't know for sure that Odell Beckham will be playing in this game. Did get hurt last week. If he does play, love him, love Zay Flowers. If he doesn't play, Rashad Bateman is someone you do want to start as well in his spot. Definitely think the passing volume will be great here. The Chargers have been actually pretty solid against the run. And then for the Chargers, it's really just Keenan Allen, and that is about it. Quentin Johnston already proving to be on that Jalen Reagor timeline when it comes to, we already know that he's a bum, that he stinks, that he sucks, that he cannot produce regardless of the opportunity, and the Ravens defense is far too good to be taking a chance on him. So I'd be sitting everybody be on Keenan Allen, and if Gerald Everett doesn't play, maybe go play Donald Parham, but other than that, there's no receivers to consider in this offense. Monday night, Bears at the Vikings. We've seen the Bears offense bounce back in a big way with Justin Fields back at quarterback, and they've got a good matchup for Fields to be able to move the ball through the air. Now, the Vikings, the amount that they do blitz can give Fields some problems. He's improved compared to last season, but still, in the bottom half of the league in terms of the metrics when it comes to against the blitz. So we'll see what he's capable of here. The Vikings 23rd in fantasy points allowed, haven't generated much of a pass rush if it isn't the help of the blitz. So could be a good opportunity for him. And then for the Vikings, pass volume should be pretty decent in this one. I'm surprised the Bears are not worse than 16th in fantasy points allowed because they're dead last in EPA against the pass. The run defense has been good. The pass defense has not. We saw it with the Lions comeback last week as well. So an opportunity here for the Vikings to move the ball through the air and not as much for me on the ground. Now, even with that opportunity, it's Jordan Addison, it's TJ Hawkinson. These other options, not enough for me, especially without Kirk Cousins at quarterback. And then for the Bears, DJ Moore is someone I definitely feel great about, but the talent level and just the ability for Darnell Mooney and Tyler Scott to produce. I thought Tyler Scott on that, when we had that Lions game last week, and that third down to ice the game, that deep shot from Justin Fields, I thought Scott ran under that ball really poorly. Should have made a play there. So don't feel good about anyone else other than I would be looking to play, obviously, DJ Moore. And then why am I blanking on their tight end? Cole Kmet. My God, the Notre Dame. I would probably feel good about Cole Kmet in this one because, again, passing volume should be good. But that's where we're at in this matchup. All right, that's every game for Week 12 of the fantasy football season. Again, guys, if you are checking out this video on Wednesday or Thursday morning, we'll be live here on the OwnersBox Sports YouTube channel if you don't follow us on our second channel, and then as well on the OwnersBox Sports Twitch if you do want to hang out. We'll be live streaming these games. Can answer any questions you guys might have about your fantasy teams as well. And have a wonderful Thanksgiving. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe as well if you're new. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.